So, B'ezras Hashem, Shavuos is Motzei Shabbos, and there's a lot that people don't really give much thought to. That's important to understand in terms of what Shavuos is about. And one aspect is the fact that the Haftorah itself is Ma'aser Kava, dealing with the whole one of the most Kabbalistic things you can talk about. Always amazing me year to year, especially on a morning that people are so tired and exhausted that they the whole night, and there you are. Most Haftorah. How many people actually pay attention to the Haftorah itself? I don't know. A lot of the words are more biblical, more difficult to understand. But certainly when you get to a Haftorah like Ma'aser Merkava, which is one of the most Kabbalistic inyan you can possibly talk about, it's just unusual that you should that should be the one that was chosen to be read specifically that day. A couple of reasons why, but one reason is because of the fact that to remind us that Torah exists on different levels. Pshat, we're talking about dwelling Pshat, because we forget that there's Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. They're all part of Torah, and the complete experience of Torah is being exposed to all four levels. If you stop short, you stop short of understanding yourself, because the four levels correspond to the four levels of Neshama. Pshat corresponds to Nefesh, Remez corresponds to Ruach, and Neshama corresponds to Drush, and then Chaya corresponds to Sod. There isn't one to correspond to Adam Kadmon, because on that level it's too high up, it's beyond description. On that level it would become unified with the knowledge itself. But those are the four levels. So when a person goes deep into Torah, they go from Pshat to Remez to Drush to Sod, you're also going from Nefesh to Ruach, Neshama to Chaya, in a sense. No one really accesses Chaya today, but for the most part, it's like conceptually, there must be some aspect of that, because the fact that you can access Sod to some degree means that you're accessing some aspect of Chaya in some way. That's what the assumption. But the main point is that the Torah is deep and has all these various different levels, and a person can't stop short, or they lose an aspect of the experience of Torah, and therefore an aspect of themselves. One question that could be asked is that why Kodesh Baruch Hu felt compelled, Kiviyachol, so to speak, to make it such an incredible experience? Why is it so important that there was the thunder and the lightning and the shofar blowing that got stronger and stronger with time, as opposed to getting weaker? It was one of the most spectacular sound and light shows probably in the entire history of mankind. And the Jewish people were so overwhelmed by it that they died hearing Kodesh Baruch Hu's voice. They came back to life again. They died a second time. They told Moshe Rabbeinu to hear the rest of the Torah on their behalf, but they could still overhear Moshe getting it. But why did it have to be such an incredibly awesome experience? So one of the reasons we developed the Parashat in advance of Shavuos, because we really want to read Parshas B'Midbar in advance of Shavuos. Because the Gemara says that anybody who wants Torah to be Mekuyam in them, to have Torah Kayam inside of them, they have to make themselves like a Midbar. As the Gemara, if they make themselves like a Midbar, different Pshat, you can also read the word Midbar as Medaber, because that's what a person really is. A person's a Medaber. That's the highest level, that when Kodesh Baruch Hu breathed Neshama into the Marishon, they became a speaking individual, as Anglis points out. We spoke about this during Pesach time. But the idea of being a Midbar is a very, very important point that ties in with this material as well. It's all part of the same idea. But the fundamental thing that a person has to understand about chinuch, about education, as this conference is going on right now, or at least it's finished at this point in time, trying to discuss what to do, because unfortunately we're living in a world today that's very distracting. This is Amalek's world. This is Mamash Amalek's world. He's got such control, because the biggest and most important device he uses to get a Jew from doing what they're supposed to do is distraction. And nothing is more distracting today than technology. Technology that's available today has infiltrated the Jewish community, the Frum community, even as far as Mei Shalom and Geula, places that once were more insular and they were more cut off. Today, you just walk through the streets and the technology is all over the place, basically. Wi-Fi, you name it, not necessarily Wi-Fi there, but certainly the cell phones. Certainly cell phones and the technology in the cell phones, even with kosher phones, you still have a lot of fun with a kosher phone. You can't text, but it's in people's hands. I mean, people are checking their phones all the time. It helps to find the person, what kind of phone you have, in the less religious circles. But it's an extremely distracting world, and it's a problem because of one very specific reason. if you had to ask a person like how they feel about all this technology. I mean, when you see all the new things coming out, you see what you can do. I mean, if you ever go to these trade shows, which I've never gone to, but I've spoken to people who have, or what about these things? What they show you, what's coming up in the future. You walk out of a place like this totally amazed. And there's one word that probably describes the entire thing. That's awesome. It's just absolutely awesome what you can do with technology today. What has been created, how you can use it. It's awesome. And anything awesome like that is something that is going to distract people and catch the attention of everybody to a large degree, because that's a very important emotional reaction to reality. It makes people feel alive. That sense of awe. That's why people go to the Grand Canyon, or they go to the Swiss Alps, or someplace where they watch the sunset over the Mediterranean Sea. You sit there and you're mesmerized because it's an awesome view. It's an awesome experience. Every day I come home down a certain path to get to my place, and it looks over the hills of Givat Yarim. And the way the sun hits in the morning, the sun hits them a certain way, and at night, and by Shkia, it hits them a certain way. And each time I walk out there, every single time for like 13, 14 years, my head's always turned to look at this view because it's unbelievable. Here also, a fantastic sunset over the valley. So just look, you're in awe, the entire thing. Have you ever watched children watching a magician show? You ever watch them? Right? How they sit there, mesmerized, even kids with ADD, and they can't sit there in school for 5-10 minutes. How they sit there for like an hour watching the magician, and they're mesmerized, and they barely look away except to look at their friend or their family, whatever, to see if they're enjoying it as much as they are. And then you ask the child when they walk out after, how was it? Right? And the child will often say, oh, it was awesome. I mean, awesome, really, really awesome. And they go home, and they get out a hat, and they get out a stick, they put on a cape, they start practicing tricks because they want to be a magician in the end. Because experience was awesome, right? And they had no problem paying attention the entire time through. And then you expect them to go to learn Torah, to do mitzvahs. And we have things like this, and a teacher struggles to keep the attention of a child for 5, 10, 15 minutes in a class because they have to teach them, they have to educate them. And how many kids actually pay attention? The Gemara says a remarkable thing. It says an absolutely remarkable thing. There's a Nida on Lamed Amud Beis. It's a famous Gemara. Everybody's heard it before. The Gemara says that before a child is born, an angel puts a candle on the head of the child inside the womb. Obviously, it's a physical candle. The mother be in big trouble, the child too for that matter. But they put a candle on the head of the child, and the Malach teaches the child Kol Torah Kula, the entire Torah. And of course, right before the child's born, right, this little gutter over here, which is obviously not for noses because if there wasn't two of them, not one, it's in the wrong place, right? But it's there because that's where the Malach slaps or touches the child to make the child forget the knowledge. So what does this Gemara mean? What's the point? If the whole point was to educate us, so why make us forget? If we're supposed to forget, then why educate us in the end? So the answer is because in order to be able to have a relationship with Torah, it has to pre-exist. It has to already be there first. That's why Kodesh Baruch Hu took Chava from Adam as opposed to Chava from the ground. In order for the relationship to exist in the future, they can become Basar Echad, they have to first be Basar Echad. So Kodesh Baruch Hu first took them apart and allowed them to go back together again. But if Chava had come from the ground, separate from Adam Rishon, there'd be no connection, no relationship, except for the fact they had a common source. Knowledge works the exact same way. If knowledge is totally outside the experience of a person, they'll never connect to the idea. So therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu programs the person, so to speak, gives them all the knowledge that's already there. So if that's the case, an education is never a process of taking something from the outside and putting it into the child or putting it into the person. That's not going to work. It's not education. Education really is a little bit different. The child already possesses all the knowledge. A person already has the entire Torah, the entire world. Inside the Torah is the blueprint for Ma'aseh Bereshis. Every single child comes pre-taught. Well, there are things that are pre-cooked and pre-baked. A child comes pre-taught, right? He knows the entire Torah.
I think the word educate is to draw out, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. That would be very interesting.
I saw this in my wife. My wife was telling us the other day. Rabbi David Aaron wrote a book on education, and he talks about education being, I mean, the Latin or Greek word that means to pull out. In other words, you're
I'll look it
pulling
up.
out of the child.
I'll look it up.
As compared to indoctrinate, which means to force into a child.
Right, right.
So it's something from the internal. It's like when you call it. Why is it called what do we call the children a garden, or kindergarten? Because what you're doing is you're growing, you're pulling, you're actually getting children to grow.
Right.
How you're growing from the ground, ground up.
So the problem is that when a person forgets something. For example, let's say a witness sees a crime, right? And they bring the witness in after, and they say, "Did you see the person?" "Yes, I did." "What did he look like?" "I'm not sure." So what they do, they take out a book of different faces, or they stand up a lineup of people, and they say, "Was it this person? Was it this person?" Well, the person told you they forgot. So why are you going through this entire exercise? Because the mind didn't forget. A person sees something, it takes a picture, like a photograph, but it's on a lesser conscious level of reality. So by showing the picture, you draw the unconscious reality to the surface. That's it. I remember that now. So the process of education is really the process of causing a person to remember something. When a person speaks, what's going on is I'm telling you these words. Everything I'm telling you, if it's part of Torah, you already know it. The difference is going to be is that right now I'm focusing on it. It's in my conscious mind, and I'm hoping that somehow by my saying it, it will draw the knowledge from your unconscious to your conscious mind, from your unconscious, your unconscious, a different story altogether. From your subconscious to your conscious mind, where you can now connect to it, relate to it, and see it as part of your own knowledge. That's what a mechanech is supposed to do. So what makes it so difficult? Why are children so hard to educate? Because we know there are tons of barriers between the person's subconscious and the person's conscious mind. And the whole, very often people have to go for therapy, to try to get to the subconscious mind. But the process of education is specifically for the sake of trying to access the subconscious and bring that knowledge to the surface. The trouble is the person gets distracted. If a person is not focused completely, or they have problems with paying attention to material or what's being taught, then they will lose their train of thought and they will be unable to allow that knowledge to come to the conscious mind. Nothing will do that better than something that grabs the attention of a person completely. And I remember when I was going through the smicha program many years back, and using computers was still kind of a new thing, but I had one of the early Macintoshes, and I had difficulty, paying attention to the material wasn't so easy. Sitting in shiur, learning with a chavrusa, we did the best we could. So what I used to do when I came home, I would actually sit down and use my laptop, which was fun, to try to organize the material. And I used to draw little pictures, basar b'challah, the whole thing, and I had all kinds of these fancy notes. And half the fun was just organizing the notes, making them look professional in the same process. And then I found I knew the material much better than I did when I was actually learning in the shiur itself. Why? Because the computer involved more of me. When I was sitting in shiur, my body was restless. I was thinking about how much longer the shiur is going to last, where I'm going after lunch at this point in time. My mind was there somewhat. My eyes were focused, but I could look right at the Rav and not see him sometimes. Or I'd be thinking about some kind of financial issue, or whatever the case may be. But I was distracted. So even though the material was going into my ears, I was definitely hearing it, I wasn't learning it in the end. But when I went home and I made the experience of education fun, it involved my hands, involved my eyes, involved my head. My body was happy to be there. It was more of a complete experience. The result was I was able to pay attention more. I was able to remember it better because the knowledge became one with me. That's what has to happen. So the trouble is, and this is part of the problem we're addressing today, is what's the challenge? You've got the world of technology, which is awesome. Everybody seems to, certainly to a child, it's awesome. And you've got the world of Torah over here, and Rabbi mechanech them and teaching them until a person gets to even adults. Even for adults, it's difficult to have an awesome experience. So what does the Kodesh Baruch Hu do by Har Sinai? Kodesh Baruch Hu, he doesn't simply say, here's the Torah, take it, live by it. You don't like it? See this mountain over your head? If you don't accept it, I drop it on you right now, and this is where you're going to die. That would be sufficient. He doesn't do that. At least not only that, right? What does he do instead? According to the Maharal, it was only to teach the Jewish people that there really was no. But that he allowed them to say Nasa v'nishma, a midst of experience that was simply awesome. Because Baruch Hu made Kabbalah Torah as awesome as people could, even more awesome than people could handle, to the point that people actually dropped dead because it was overly awesome. To say what? That unless you make Torah awesome, unless it's going to be awesome, unless you find a way to show children this is the most awesome thing in the world. There's nothing more awesome than this, and that's not a pretense. That's not a game. That's not a sheker. We're making things up. It actually is the most awesome thing in the world. This is the word of God. This is the understanding of who man is. This is the blueprint for Maaseh Bereshis. Is there anything more? What invention can there be in Maaseh Bereshis that mankind has created that goes beyond the blueprint for all of creation? That includes the universe and the planets and the solar systems and the ones beyond the solar system, and all the microscopic level down to quarks and things, everything. It's all part of Torah. You learn Pshat, you learn Remez, you drew Sod, you get to the level of Kabbalah, right? You go learn through all of Shas. You see everything. It is by definition the most awesome experience in the world. And the beautiful thing about that is once Torah becomes awesome, the veils disappear and the knowledge runs from the subconscious to the conscious mind, and that's how you become a Talmid Chacham. That's how you become a Yir Shemayim. That's the issue. That's what Har Sinai was. The whole experience was created specifically to teach the Jewish people that unless you can pass this on to your children, unless you can maintain not just the education, not just the intellectual connection from one generation to the next generation, but you have to maintain the awe of Torah. Take the most awesome thing in the world. At one point in time, it was the massive Roman army. It was their big catapults, right? It was the bridges they built. It was the Swiss Alps. It was the mountain. Whatever it was, it's all awesome. Today it's technology, but whatever it is, none of it comes close to the awesomeness of Torah. And you have to ask yourself the question: if Torah is less awesome than all of these things, there's something missing from your connection to Torah. And as long as that awe is missing, you'll be handicapped from being able to draw the subconscious knowledge that you walk around with. The entire Torah is inside of you to the surface where you can enjoy it, where it becomes one. You become one with it, and as a result of it, you become a much more complete and fuller person. There's nothing more pleasurable than that, because at the end of the day, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's a huge, rocket ship, going to outer space with a billion, working parts and the fire and the whole thing, or a small little handheld, computer in your hand that can do so many things that you could, 10 years ago it took a whole block of computers to accomplish. It's cheating. It's not the real awe. It's not the real awe. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to be nended, to get pleasure from, and when it's finished, it's over. There's no real sense of accomplishment. Maybe the beginning, until you learn how to use it to your advantage. But what did you accomplish in terms of self-development? Very little. It was fun. There's a difference between fun and pleasure. You can have fun in a billion ways, but pleasure comes from one thing and one thing only: a sense of accomplishment, a sense of self-development, a sense of becoming more of who you are than you were the 50 minutes ago when you first started. Nothing gives pleasure more than that, because we're hardwired to have pleasure that way. We're hardwired to be able to not feel real sense of completion until we're using a potential that we ourselves have within ourselves, and we use it by lefum sar agra, by making the effort to accomplish. That's really what the whole Har Sinai experience is supposed to bring out. That's what Shavuos is about. It's not just Kabbalah Torah, but Kabbalah Torah means, by definition, you have to get to the point where the awe of Torah is real to you, because then the veils disappear, and then you become like a midbar. Because that mesmerization you see when children sit there watching a magician or anything exciting or whatever's taking place in your own personal life that captivates your attention and keeps you focused, that mesmerization, for the moment that you're mesmerized, for the moment that you're totally absorbed in the moment, you're like a midbar. You're like a desert. Crises will do that.
No distractions.
No distractions, right? No distractions, nothing else going on there. Basically, everything is exactly what it is. No pretenses. It's all simplicity. Straight simplicity. And that's what has to happen for a person to be able to connect with Kosh Baruch Hu and the Torah, and to be able to use it to rise above the reality in which we live, and to combat the onslaught of Amalek's technology and distraction, and to use it for the good, for the advantage. You have to be able to achieve that sense of awe and live with it on a daily basis.
How do we do that, Rob?
How do you do that? Well, first of all, number one is you don't drown in Pshat, right? You got to go deeper and deeper and deeper. Are you going to read to me something?
I just want to show you something. Just to say, to compliment what you're talking about. It says the word education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to draw out.
Very interesting. There you go.
Educate, therefore, means to draw out something that fundamentally is already there. That's exactly what he said.
Yeah.
In the process of education, you actually become aware of yourself. You grow, you transform, and become the real you. Rather than simply memorizing a bunch of information, you absorb ideas that draw out the inner you and bring you into the world of harmonious relationships. As you discover your own inner being of chaim, you discover the chaim of all the chaim of all people from the interrelatedness we all share. Okay? Indoctrination, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of education. Though a lot of indoctrination masquerades as education, indoctrination seeks to put something into you, like socialization, indoctrination, So while education tries to bring something out, at the very, and then it goes here, it says, while an educator, it says, in other words, the educator's job is creating an environment that feeds you ideas that will nourish you in a manner in which you will grow and flourish. A good educator only wants you to be who you are. While an educator is like a gardener, an indoctrinator is like a carpenter. A carpenter imposes his vision on raw material, while a gardener sets his vision according to the seeds. Whatever you know is, if you're a pear, you take care of a pear tree. If you're an apple, you take care of it. Each seed has its own, so you got to take care of this. Right. But if you're the carpenter, you want to do something with that piece of wood, you're imposing your will on it.
Right. Very good. That's very good. Very good. So it's going just one step further and say that he's basically saying that there's certain basic intrinsic natures to a person that can't be ignored. We're going one step further and saying that the whole knowledge base is inside of a person. The entire Torah is inside of an individual. So not just about respecting the person's nature. That's crucial. And that's the starting point. We're even going one step further by saying that even the knowledge that you would think you could only indoctrinate, that you could only give over, from the outside to the inside, is already inside. So all education, by definition, is the process of pulling out and bringing to the conscious mind. And that's what we're trying to do the entire time. So that's why there's always a sense of recognition. When you finally hear something and it makes sense to you, and you go, oh, right, there's a sense of as if I knew that before, but how? From where? Where did I learn that before? So the answer is because that was successfully brought from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind, and then it becomes yours, it becomes part of who you are.
So that's the whole Gemara need, is what you're talking about.
That's the whole Gemara.
That's the need.
That's what the Gemara means. So that's and the best way to do that is for Torah to be awesome. For a person, every educator has to be like a magician.
So you're saying that an educator, in order to educate, every educator has to be a magician.
Basically.
Has to be a magician. Yeah. So how does he become a magician? He has to have the tools of magic, right? So what's the tools of magic? Are you suggesting that every educator teaches the child sewed at a young age? Not Zohar itself per se. Right. But I'll tell you, Drew actually experimented with this once before. I had a situation where somebody was he was like about 15, 16 years of age. That's already a little bit older, but you could have done the same thing on a younger age as well. It's just that question how you gear it, how on what level you taught. But this child, in fact, had difficulty in school, and that's why he was out of school for the time being, looking for a different place to go to learn. And it fell upon me to, don't even ask how, but it fell upon me to fill his morning with education, to help him. He shouldn't, until he found a place to learn, basically, that he had to keep learning in the meantime. And he had difficulty. He had difficulty paying attention. He didn't have a lot of respect for the knowledge because, he wasn't a top student. He had a slight learning disability, but very slight. He was outgrowing it for the most part, and for the most part, he'd caught up. And but he just wasn't in the system. He just wasn't my team for the system. It was nature. And so I thought, he's mine for a couple hours anyhow. I might as well have some fun, right? So what actually I did was I took sections of Shar HaGilgulim, but not ones that were like very complicated. The Kabbalistic parts he's not going to relate to. That'd be a waste of time. But think, for example, to show how certain Rabbanim, the Gemara, came from other Rabbanim, and how the Nefesh, Ruch, and the Neshama, it's like in a context that would then tie to the Gemara we're going to learn after. We didn't learn Gemara first, we learned this first, basically. And I explained the rules of creation history, and I gave him some information that, it was also one-on-one, which is a much different scenario than, let's say, 25 kids in a class.
right? And I'll tell you a story in a second. But he paid attention the entire time through. Not only did he pay attention, but when we finally came to learn Gemara, he was 100% there, and we actually were Messiahing Masechta within about 45 days in Nisim on it, and I gave him tests and the whole thing, and he did fantastically the entire way through, and then he went to Cheder after that, and lost it all, basically. Lost it all after that. Just they went right back in the system, they didn't do anything like this, but it was an amazing thing, and I've done this, by the way, with other kids as well, where I've obviously with teenagers it's a little bit easier to some degree, but you could gear it to, it's not just the material also, it's also the way you teach, it's also the personality you present, it's also the, what you do in the process of it. If a child, you tell a child, look both ways before you cross the road. The child's like about 8 years of age, for example, will he look both ways before he crosses the road? You know how it usually works? They go halfway across the road, they remember to look both ways, they go back to the sidewalk, look both ways, and then cross the road. They were already halfway across they could have been killed already by the fact that they were half across the road, but they came back and remembered it was too late. It was like, that's not what, the mother like watching from the window, probably freaked out watching the whole thing taking place. What happens though, let's say that child's walking across the road and a car comes down the street, puts in the brakes, screeches, for a good 15, 20 feet, stops about 5 feet short of the child, right? But what happens to the child? The child stands there frozen in his footsteps. That child will never forget to look both ways when he crosses the road from that point onward. He will be 45 years of age, right, in downtown New York, where they cross on red lights basically, but he will not leave that curb until he looks both ways. He will look both ways before he even gets to the curb in the end, because it's so ingrained in his being. Why? Because that scary experience was so overwhelming. Whatever else he was thinking about, whatever distraction he was living with, completely disappeared. For one moment, when those tires screeched and he realized he's going to get killed, possibly at this moment in time, every single sense and sensation were working together at that point in time. It was a total educational experience. It was overly educational, because now he'll have fears of crossing the road. But you have to translate that reality into everyday teaching in a class. And some teachers can do that. There's some very gifted teachers who have, and you see, it's a personality thing for the most part. They're the right personality, the right heart, in the right place. They're creative. They know what they're up against, and they go in there with an attitude that somehow I have to get these kids to want to enjoy being here and want to enjoy what they're learning. And those, the Gemara talks about Girsa de Yankasa, right? That you learn things as a child, you never forget the rest of your life. As an adult, you can forget things the next day. 15 minutes later, you can forget them. You know why? Because adults are distracted. It's very hard to be an adult, even if you're living in Kolo. It's easier, but it's still hard because you've got concerns. You've got a wife. You've got children. You've got this. You've got bills. It's hard to be cut off from the world around you, even for 4 or 5 hours a day. A child, if he's focused, he has nothing else but what he's doing right now. He's not thinking down the road something else, unless what's coming down the road is way more exciting what he's doing right now. But if what he's experiencing right now is all that he wants to be doing, and he's totally wrapped in it and involved with it, then he will think of nothing else, and the experience will be total, or close to being total, and you will never forget that knowledge the rest of your life. So, there's different ways of doing it. As an adult, for example.
That's probably why he has such retention.
Yeah.
Because he's totally focused.
There's less gaiva, less personality involved.
Right. So, and he's totally in the moment. He's totally in the moment. That's the nature of a child. Totally in the moment. I guess that's it's amazing. Like a child. There's so much wisdom in a child, but he's not aware of it until. Yeah,
because the body's not up to speed yet. The soul is an adult from birth. There's no such thing as a baby soul. So it's an adult from birth. The body is not up to speed. So therefore, he's got to get the body on side, right? And it's amazing. You can get out of children much more than we're used to because of the fact that we tend to just go straight at it, and we talk to them like adults. Adults come to a lecture because they want to hear. The lecturer could be boring, but if he's talking about life-saving material that people came to hear about, right? Some kind of doctor talking about, the importance of good digestion, things like that, and the diseases that result if you don't have it. So he can get up there and he can talk like, straight, monotone voice with slides, the whole thing. But people will pay attention because they're there for the material. That's what adults do. Adults will force themselves to stay awake because they say this is important to know, and they make themselves do it. Children are only interested in fun, period. You cannot make a child not interested in fun. And you can't make an adult, for that matter, not interested in being something interesting. So therefore, the educational process has to be awesome. And it's there. It's just a question of being clever and creative. Just tell you, a story that a Rav that I know is actually Rav Beis Shemesh, who was actually had this. He was actually talking at my son's, the Cheder year-end Mesiba that they have, and he was talking about how he had the schus to talk to Rav Moshe Feinstein Tzitzal, and he asked him, like, how did Rav Moshe become such a masmid? How did he become such, to accomplish so much? He said it wasn't how much he was such a masmid, but he said when he was young, there was this mechanech in the town, and he was very good, and he would only teach 6 children at one time, and Rav Moshe, I think, would have been the 7th, something like that, and his father did everything he could to convince, he was mostly nefesh to, I don't even remember the details now, but he was mostly nefesh to give Rav Moshe in with this mechana to have him teach him, because he knew that if this Rebbe got his hands on Rav Moshe, one day he would be something in learning, because he imparted the love of Torah, the awesomeness of Torah, and Rav Moshe said that changed his life, learning with a specific Rebbe at that age. Obviously, he probably has certain koiches to begin with, but it makes a lot of very talented people get turned off from learning because of who they learn from during the years. And a lot of people who weren't so talented in learning become little dynamos in learning because of the fact they're inspired by some Rebbe. But I'll tell you, somebody I know personally, who told me a personal story, that we're talking about these ideas, and he was telling me that for the longest time he had a difficult time with the Gemara, the whole thing, and davening was difficult for him. He knew Torah was right; it was the right thing to do. So therefore, there was no question this is the way he was going to live. There was no question. But it was like pulling teeth sometimes. Getting out of bed in the morning for davening was a difficult thing. Going through his schedule was, learning the day was difficult. He did it. He was a good soldier. He said that one day, that accidentally he stumbled onto davening nates. One day he had to be up in the morning for a specific reason, right? And he came across nates because that was the only minute on time to be back in time what he had to do. Right, and apparently the thing lasted 3 days, and he ended up having nates 3 days in a row. Each day that he thought, this is the last time I'm going to do this, this is the last time I'm going to do this, but he kept doing it. After 3 days, he said, I could probably do this. I remember myself personally walking by, to go to a 7 o'clock minyan and seeing the nates minyan finishing and being jealous of these guys that they are finishing already that early in the morning. But I thought to myself, that's something I maybe will do when I'm 85 years of age. I don't need my sleep anymore. And he said he began to daven nates every single day. And he noticed it was a whole different experience. He found himself getting up early in the morning on time, getting to shul, and loving it, and enjoying the davening. It made him feel special, made him feel unique. So he thought to himself, something? Why not learn a little bit before davening? That means a little bit earlier to get up in the morning. And he did it. Today he does it all the time. And he says that brought an awe in learning and davening he never experienced before. But he stumbled into it, and once you start going down that path, there's all kinds of possibilities. But you have to find something that's unique to you that makes you feel like this is a special occasion. I remember when I used to come to Harnaf, I used to teach in the Neve Yerushalayim in the evenings, and coming to Yerushalayim in the afternoon could take twice as long because the traffic in the highway gets all backed up. So I decided instead to come earlier, actually by rush hour time. So I came early in the afternoons when it was lighter. And I would learn in Chavas Das over here, for a couple hours, because that's such a nice base medrash, and I used to find a place, good tea, good coffee, and I would go there. And also, I like the atmosphere. It's a very halachic atmosphere.
You mean Rabbi Barrios?
Yeah. And I would go there, and I would learn my Gemara, my halacha, and amongst the crowd would help me, feel inspired to learn. But then I would learn Leshem. And when I learned Leshem, it was just the opposite atmosphere. Quiet, peaceful, by myself. So I used to go upstairs into the base medrash, the base knesset part, which was empty during the day, and I went even one floor higher than that. I went up to the Ezras Nashim, right? The Ezras Nashim in a shul, and right in the Ezras Nashim there's a window that overlooks the valley, just that whole valley. And I would be there by Shkia. I'd be there learning at the time the sun was setting over this valley. And that, plus learning the Leshem, was such an awesome experience that every single day I would be there doing this. I would just be in a world of my own. It was such a unique, this very day, like 10, 12 years later, I recall it, and I miss it. I realized a unique period of time in my life where I could do that. But it was an awesome setting, with an awesome learning, with an awesome sunset, and an awesome country, made for a very awesome experience. And that carries you. That it inspires you. It builds you. I remember I used to go to teach after that, and I'd be like up here. Right? I'd go into teach, and I would literally been a whole different level. I usually would teach something that I saw that day in the lesson, bring it down to earth, and make it into a shiur somehow. But I remember just walking to teach. I was just like on a whole different level. Daven Mari was a whole different Mari because the experience was fantastic. And that's what has to happen. It's the experience. Learning has to become that way. The cheder system has to be that way. If you want to solve the problem of technology today, because Baruch Hu did it already by Har Sinai. So we can't create lightning and thunder like he did, although the truth is Hollywood probably could, but not the same level. And we can't create that same sound and light show. But the art itself, there's ways to do it enough that children on a daily basis can actually come to learn Torah, love it for themselves. Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg Tzitzar once was talking to us, and he said it was up to him. He said the first 7 years of cheder, of education, would be totally to focus only on a Havas Torah and a Havas Rebbe. No stressing out the kids, let them go home at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, play games, whatever the case may be. It should be a wonderfully positive experience until Kitachet. Kitachet already, they're more mature, more open to learn things, and whatever time they lost over the years of not being in school longer, they'll make up because they will be burned out for the next 10 upcoming years after that. So these are very important issues. This is all to do with Shavuos itself. Okay, it's also very true in terms of what we're talking about here as well. Now, the last thing we spoke about was about how the Medrash was talking about Rabbi Baruch Chana on the boat, the ship, the fish, the whole thing, and how Rabbeinu Yaakov, he explained that Medrash in terms of an end of days event that matches the situation today perfectly. It's like literally, and who would have thought of it? And it's just take the time to appreciate what is being said and what it's alluding to, and how it's so prophetic in understanding the events of history. But more importantly, the fact that he calls it an end of days event, meaning that the situation today is like fits it like a glove. What's going on today in Israel with the Palestinians, Intifada 1, Intifada 2, world pressure, the whole thing, that he calls all of that an Achris Yamin type of event, means by definition we are in Achris Yamin. We're at the end of days. I mean, the Gra already called it back in the 1700s.
How was it now an end of days event?
Because he says the whole Medrash of Rabbi Baruch Chana with the fish in the boat, he says that's a prophecy about the end of days.
What, the flipping over?
The flipping over the fish represents the flipping over this people. Let's review it, okay? The Medrash says that they're on a boat, they get to an island, there's grass growing on this fish for whatever reason. Obviously, it's probably more than allegory than anything else at all. And they get on this, not more likely it is allegory. I don't think this is a real story. It doesn't have to be, that's for sure. And they alight onto this fish, they begin to cook and bake and all these wonderful things, and the fish feels the heat, turns over, they fall into the water. Had the boat not been ready, says Rabbi Baruch Chana, we would have drowned in the water. So Rabbeinu Yaakov in the 1800s writes that this Medrash is talking about Achris Yamin.
Rabbeinu Yaakov.
Yes.
This is his commentary.
This is his commentary. It's talking about Achris Yamin, and it's talking about that in the end of days the Jewish people will rule over another people, a non-people basically, another people, and they will think this people has no way to ever change their situation, and therefore they will ignore the situation, the Jewish people, but at some point in time, these people will turn the situation over. That's the fish. Things will get hot. The fish will turn over. The people will turn the situation over, the plate over in its mouth is the expression. And if Mashiach is ready, that's the boat, right? Mashiach is ready, everything will be fine. If Mashiach is not ready, then we will drown from the problems these people create for us. That's what the Medrash says. And 20 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to say, yeah, it's talking about today. But today, we can say it's talking about today because it's exactly what happened. We're ruling over people.
But the Medrash is saying it, or Rabbi Baruch Chana is saying this?
Rabbeinu Yaakov said all that. The Medrash itself only went as far as the boat and getting on the boat.
The Gemara is bringing the Medrash. Is that
yes, the Gemara brings the Medrash.
And then who is saying that the boat is
The shiur, that's Rabbi Yaakov.
Okay, so that's his interpretation.
That's all his parish.
I see, okay.
Right? The Medrash itself is just the story of the boat. We wouldn't even think about it as a messianic story from the Gemara itself. I mean, there's many perushim on this Medrash. The Gra has one as well. Rabbi Yaakov is mechadash this. He says this, right? But we might have read it, just after he wrote it, in the 1800s, and said to ourselves, "That's interesting," but where'd you come up with that? And who says that's even right?
Is this guy's name Lorbevan? Is that
Yeah. So as a result of that, the fact that we're living through a situation today where we can say, "Wow, that's unbelievable," of all the perushim on that medrash, his suits the reality to a T, like a glove. It's perfect. Exactly what he says is going to happen is exactly what has happened in the last, since 1987 already, right? If that's the case, and it is what it seems to be, that would mean we're living achris yamin by definition. That's the point. That's the point. Not just think to fight and all that, but the point, what are we trying to establish? Where are we holding? Where are we holding in history? Right? Where are we holding with Eretz Yisrael? This whole machlok is going on now for 64 some odd years. Is this part of the Gula process? Right? Is this a chiluk of the Gula, or is it simply a mistake? Right? There are people who hold it's a complete mistake, and people hold it's the Gula itself, and some people go, well, it's not exactly the Gula, but certainly a chiluk of the Gula. Where are we holding? How do we know? Well, if it's an achris yamin type of event taking place today, it means everything what's happening right now is all part of the end of days. It's not going to change again. It's not going to go back to where there's no other exos coming up. It changes the whole status of history over the last 100, 200 years. The Gra himself says, back at his time, this is the beginning of the end. He calls it already Dor Basra'ah, the final generation. Back in the 18th century, he's saying that already. How much more so today, in 2012, we're already by Dor Basra'ah. We haven't got to the other points of information that to help to frame all this, right? So far, we're only dealing with that one medrash. And that one medrash says, when a situation of this happens at some point in Jewish history, as it's happened today, is that this is an achris yamim type of an event. That's a very important point. So it comes on the Rizal, right? And again, here's another source. It's an amazing source, amazing source. But how many people learn Shar HaGilgulim? How many people are exposed to that type of information? It's an amazing thing because here is a critical piece of information about the end of history and about our generation, right? And almost nobody knows about it. And we'll see there's all kinds of pieces of information, and without it, you cannot possibly have the big picture. Without this information, you can easily make a mistake about where things are going historically. So what does he say? He says the following thing. He says, now you can understand the meaning of, behold, you shall die with your fathers, and this people will rise up. It's a pasuk in Devarim, right? Parashat Vayelech, where Kodesh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going to die, right? We already discussed that. You're not going to Israel. You will die, and this people will get up. And they will go after the ways of the Canaanim, and they're going to rebel against me and Torah. That's what's coming up once you die. That's the good news, right? What's the bad news? She won't be here to fix it, right? That's the situation, the way it's going to be. So, we read that pasuk every year. How many people stop in that pasuk? They just read the pasuk as it is.
So is it you're going to die. He's saying this is God speaking to
This is God talking to Moshe Rabbeinu.
He says you're going to die and the people will rebel.
They will rise up. They will get up. They will get up.
They will get up.
Right, that's what the pasuk says. So this pasuk, who thinks about this pasuk? Who thinks twice about it? But the Gemara in Yuma says there are 5 psukim that we don't exactly know Pshat because they're ambiguous. We're not quite sure what they mean. Right? We know what they're saying. We're not quite sure exactly that's what the pasuk means in the end. This is one of the 5 psukim. Why? Because the word v'kam could either go on Moshe Rabbeinu or it can go on the people. The way it's written is not 100% sure. We read it as the people because how can Moshe get up? He's not taking a nap. He's going to lie down for good. He's going to die. Because you're going to take a nap and get up 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and these people it's not talking about this. You are going to die right now, and therefore, who's getting up? The people. But it's singular. The come, it doesn't say the right, the kum, it doesn't, it's talking singular, talking a singular person, but the word ha'am can also be like a singular noun. So therefore you can use v'kam with ha'am as well, but it's ambiguous. So like Kabbalah is one to do, right? It basically comes and it was machriya. The Rizal says, yeah, well, the Gemara is talking on the level of drush. On the level of drush, Pshat, Rebbe, and drush, we don't know exactly what the pasuk means. But on the level of sod, we know what this word kam applies to both. Because this pasuk is talking about how basically that the end of days, passing of days, and actually, well, at the end of days, yeah, it's before Tichas HaMesim, he's going to say in a second, right, that both will get up. Both Moshe and the nation will get up. In other words, on a Pshat level, this pasuk is talking about when they go to Eretz Canaan and they cross the Jordan River, and that's as far as it's reaching to the future. Right? You'll die, they'll get up, and they'll go after the ways of the Canaani. That's the Pashut Pshat of the pasuk. Ambiguous, fine. Comes along the reason he says, yeah, but this pasuk is really talking about, but what's going to happen? Akwis Yamin. What's going to happen? That Moshe will come back, you will get up, you will die, but no, you will get up again. When? Every generation you will come back, and the leaders of the generation, or one leader of the generation, as the Zohar says, to fix the Erev Rav, but specifically, says the Gemara, says the Lashon, says everybody, that Moshe comes back to be Mashiach. His neshama will be in the body of Mashiach. Beseder. So the body will come from Yehuda, but the neshama, the motor running it, will be Moshe's neshama in the egg. Because his body doesn't have to come back specifically. He will come back to finish off what he started and didn't complete. You will lie down and you will one day get up again in the future time to redeem the Jewish people. And not only that, Moshe Benu, but also the people will get up. So the word Vakam is actually going on both, Moshe and the people. And that's why it's ambiguous, because it wants on a sod level to tell you it's talking about both. And they'll also get up. The Dor HaMidbar will come back in the final generation.
Is that problematical though? Because now we're talking about not just before you said the people would get up. You could say it could be singular because it's a unit. Moshe is an individual, so it could become. But now when you're talking about both of them, that becomes plural. It's still singular.
No, not talking about both of them at the same time. It's purposely being able to be going both directions. Not talking about it as one unit. So you will get up, and by the way, they will also get up. Now the word can be read with both, because both will get up. Right? So it says they will also come back. The Dor HaMidbar will come back at the end of days. They will be the souls of the final generation. And not only will they come back, says the Rizal, but so will the Erev Rav come back as well. They'll also be there. I mean, they're there all through history, but I guess there's something unique about the reality of the Erev Rav at the end of history. That's the reason. And it says, read the whole thing.
These are from this generation, or the last generation. The Erev Rav will be as the same as from the.
It means the souls of Moshe, the soul of Moshe, the souls of the Dor Midbar, and the souls of the Erev Rav will come back, and they will have a repeat performance. Right? He says, however, it can be explained with the words "rise up," referring to that which comes before and after them, and both explanations are true. For in the future, Moshe himself will reincarnate and return in the final generation, as it says, "You will die with your fathers, and you will rise up." However, in that final generation, again, Dor Basra, right? In that final generation, the Dor Midbar, the generation of the desert, will also reincarnate with the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, and this is what the verse also says: this people will rise up. Hence, there is not a single generation which Moshe Rabbeinu does not return. Besod, the sun rises, the sun sets, and it's incorrection at the same time I'm doing this. Right, there's a passage from Koheles. The sun rises and the sun sets, referring to one gadol door dies, one comes back, and one generation goes, another one comes, in order to rectify each generation. However, in the final generation, the generation of the desert, along with the Erev Rav, reincarnate, as it says, like in the days of leaving Egypt. So,
the word they're using is here.
In terms of the people, yeah, the pasuk uses it.
So usually when the Torah uses the word it does refer to
Usually ha'am. Ha'am is usually Erev Rav. Ha'am is usually Erev Rav. Am itself is usually the Jewish people. Right? But either way, and it could be the Torah itself as ha'am, which refers to the Erev Rav. Right? But even still, it's the Pshat seems to include the Jewish people at the same time. So this, what is this? What is this saying? This is telling us. I mean, what do we need this for? Who cares? What difference does it make? Take a look around. Do you see anything differently? Right? You see the Jewish people living today struggling to survive as a people, as a nation. You see enemies like we've always had. You see mixed multitude like we've always had. You know, World War II, you had capos, right? Germans used to talk about how capos would do things to Jews that they themselves wouldn't do, wouldn't think of doing. You know, lighting the beards of rabbis on fire as they're right, alive. And we've always had Erev Rav all through history. So what's unique about that? Why must we know that? And why does the Kodesh Baruch Hu do it? Simply because everything else is being recycled, so why not recycle souls too? Right? We're living in a generation of recycling, paper, garbage, right? So souls, there weren't enough to go around, right? Kodesh Baruch Hu ran out, miscalculated to bring some back from the old days, fix them, put them in the bodies of people today. Why is the Kodesh Baruch Hu going to the trouble, so to speak, of taking old souls from back then and putting them to new bodies in this generation? Why is it not enough that we're simply who we are? The Gula will come, however it comes in the end. Because there's only one answer. Everything has to do with tikkun. It's all about rectification. And in the final generation, we have to rectify something that happened a long time ago that we never quite rectified. What didn't we rectify? What did the people of the Midbar who died in the Midbar, what did they not rectify? What did they do wrong in the first place? By Har Sinai, they ran over too quickly. They paid for that in the end, right? Egla Zahav, right? Did we pay for that in the end? Yes, we did. We lost 3,000 people who were executed because of their involvement, and we were humbled. What did we do wrong in the Midbar that we never ever quite fixed up? There's only one thing: the Meraglim, the spies, right? Because they were forced to die in the Midbar. There was no fixing that up. Kodesh Baruch Hu said, "This is the 10th time you've tested me. The straw that broke the camel's back. Here's where you're going to die." And we never recover. We never recover. Why? Because we go to Eretz Yisrael, and Balak and Bilam, they have a hashpah on us in the end. But the result is that Reuben, Gad, Menashe chose to stay east of the Jordan River. They never took the land. Moshe says, he said, "Don't you understand that for 40 years, we've been wandering this whole desert because your ancestors did the exact same thing. They rejected Eretz Yisrael." So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, forget it. Just give it to them in the meantime. The Medrash says the moment they asked for that land on the east of the Jordan River, it was the beginning of Galus Bavel, the Babylon exile, which we wouldn't even go into for 850 years in the future. But that was the beginning of it, which means we never entered the land. By entering the land, we were already beginning an exile, right? The exile to Babel for the entire nation of Yehuda and Benjamin and whoever survived at that time, right? It's already beginning. The moment they asked, we're still holding the east of the Jordan River, we haven't crossed. We didn't cross. I mean, physically we crossed. That's why we couldn't wipe away all the Canaani that we're supposed to wipe away. So therefore, the only purpose in bringing back the neshamas of the people of that time is to rectify the mistake they made. What was the mistake they made? They rejected Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, the correction would be just the opposite. Not the rejection, but the acceptance. The love, the desire, the willingness to go in. What was their svara? What was the svara of the Meraglim? They came back and said to Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? We don't want it. Why not? We don't want the whole thing. We don't want Torah, mitzvahs, you, none of it. That's what they did? No. They came back and they said, we don't reject you. I mean, why should we reject you? We know you exist. You're God. We can prove it. We were there. We heard you speak at Har Sinai. We reject Torah? Chas v'chalila. How can we reject Torah? Korach got killed. They got killed. Everyone's getting killed all over the place. Why would we possibly... Actually, Korach wasn't killed yet, but that's later on. But we've seen enough of a Kodesh Baruch Hu to know he's real about the Torah. He's real about the punishments. We didn't reject him. We didn't reject Torah. Rejected Eretz Yisrael. What was the svara? What was the svara? You have to justify yourself. Hi Hashem, we want your Torah, but only through Averis. Hit us now. Boom. You have to have a svara. You have to have a reason you to come back and present this to Kodesh Baruch Hu. You know he's right there. The Ananei Kavod are hovering over. You got man falling from Shemayim. Be'er Miriam is following you around. The miracles are unbelievable. You know the hashgacha practice is there. You can't simply turn your back on Kodesh Baruch Hu and expect to walk away. 12 million Jews died in Makas Choshech in Mitzrayim because they turned their back on the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So they can't turn their back on Hashem. So what was their story? What was their logic? What? Listen to the words carefully. Which mitzvah did they think they had to be doiche the mitzvah Eretz Yisrael? That's all there was. Kosh Baruch Hu loves Torah. He loves people learning it day and night. Right? Let's show Kosh Baruch Hu how great our love of Torah really is. We will come back to him and say to him the following thing: Kosh Baruch Hu, we don't want to go in, but not because it's not a beautiful land. It's a beautiful. Look at the place, beautiful. It's like a gorgeous place, no question about it. You chose a great place, but what can we do? We love Torah so much.
They complain about the land.
Because that's to the people. They try to discourage them because they knew what they're up against, right? Especially the women, they knew what they're up against. They had to tried to make it scary for them, and that was probably more for the women than for the men in the end, because they thought that's what they'll frighten them into not wanting to go. They were terribly wrong about that, but that's what they thought. But they come back to Kosh Baruch Hu, they're going to say, if we have to fight 7 years to conquer the land, 7 years to divide the land, when will we learn? What's going to happen to my learning, my chavrusas? It's not going to, like right now, I get up in the morning, I go right to the base measures early, I learn before davening, I daven, I learn after davening. What do I eat? The man falls from Shemai. This is mamash mein olam haba. It's like Shabbos every day. Mein olam haba is fantastic, and we can just learn and go from darga to darga to darga. Your Torah is unbelievable. If we go now, maybe someday in the future for sure, a stronger generation. But if we go now into Eretz Yisrael, what will happen to our learning? How can Hashem turn this down?
That's the same lie that we reject.
How can Hashem?
Reject self-emancipation.
Yeah. How can Hashem turn us down? And that's why. Look what happens. Look what happens. They're totally shocked. You can see they believed in what they were saying. They weren't simply like trying to delude themselves, because you can fool yourself some of the time. Everybody else most of the time. Kosh Baruch Hu, none of the time. Never. And they knew that, right? Kosh Baruch Hu says, how much longer do I have to put up with these people? I cannot believe it. What? What? You didn't like that? We change our mind. We'll go. No, sorry, it's too late. You'll get burned. You'll die in the process. You're not going to survive. I'm like, we'll attack you. It's not going to happen. You lost the chance. Well, no, but we changed our mind. They go anyhow. They die in battle. Huge chilul Hashem, because they die in the process, right? Because Baruch Hu Moshe warned them in the end. Why were they so shocked? Why were they so shocked? Because they thought they were right. And they were grossly wrong. Completely wrong. Because Baruch Hu says, part of that Torah is taking that land. Right? If you don't, when I give it to you as a gift, it's there. And I prepared for you. It's like, what else can you ask for? It's all there. What's missing? It's like a person who says, I can't move in yet to my apartment because they barely have the walls up. The walls go. Still can't move in. There's no water running. The water's running. Still can't. There's no electricity. Electricity is going, right? No furniture. Now there's furniture, right? The father-in-law or the father, whatever, the parents, they furnish the whole thing beautifully. And the son says, I still can't go in. Why not? I like where I am. But look what we did. It's ready to go. It's packaged. It's all beautiful. No, but it's like I got to move. It's different communities, the whole thing. But this is where you're meant to be. Because Baruch Hu says, Torah is the place that Torah, Eretz Yisrael is the place that Torah was designed to be lived. This is the place that you put into action the most important result of Torah, the most important to'elis of Torah, and that is bitachon namunah. The expression of the relationship. Torah is a means to that relationship. It's not just like, an educational product. It's a means to bitachon and amunah. And there's only one place in the world where you can express the bitachon amunah, and that's in Eretz Yisrael. It's the Meraglim. They're going to come back later on in history. Or Midbar will come back in history. That's what they're rectifying. So all of a sudden,
doesn't the Ari say that? I think it's the Ari. Doesn't it say that the mitzvah of Bikurim is a tikkun for the Meraglim? I've heard this.
Could be. It would make sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
I don't recall that, but it would make a lot of sense.
I
All
heard
the
it from
fruits.
Rabbi Malevsky. He said it. I think it's from the Ari. He said that the tikkun for the Meraglim was the Bikurim. It makes sense, because what do? You have to go into
This whole
the land,
bidui.
you have to plant. The bidui, you have to plant. It's the dependent upon the Kodesh Baruch, but you still have to do your stuff.
Yeah, no, it would make a lot of sense, 100%. I don't remember seeing that, but it's a beautiful idea. It would make a lot of sense. But the point of this medrash, the point of this arizal, right? Especially on the last one, speaking about the last one, this piece of sod is telling you that before you reject the land of Eretz Yisrael, even if your reason is for the sake of learning Torah in comfort, undistracted, think twice. Where's it coming from? Is it a halachically, a reality? There's literally a halachic basis for why you can't come. In other words, you would rather come. Your desire, your heart's there. You're saying to yourself, gee, I wish I was one of those fortunate people who could live in Eretz Yisrael, who could learn Torah in Yisrael, who had the kaiches to be there, and whatever it takes to. I wish I could, aim Torah, Ketorah Eretz Yisrael, and this machking the person, and it's just the home of the Jewish people. Oh, to be walking in the place where my forefathers walked. To be able to go to the Kaiso on a weekly basis, maybe on a daily basis, and see what the base of Mikdash is supposed to be. Fine, there's a mosque right there, but that's only temporary now. Eventually, the base of Mikdash is going to come back, and I can go to the Kaiso, I can daven. I wish I could be doing that. Oh, it pains me. I can't do that. But what can I do? The halachas have to stay, as opposed to I don't really want to go. I don't really want to go, but I can't admit it out loud. I can't I can't downplay Eretz Yisrael. I can't reject it. I mean, that would really sound like kfira. I still remember the story of the Meraglim. I got to find a halachic basis for why I'm not going, to justify it, to put my head up. Really, I don't want to go. My heart's not there. Ki ratzu avdech es avneha was a freichen. Says David HaMelech. The whole source of the gula barachamim is ki ratzu avdech es avneha. There's a freichen, and your heart has to be there. The heart of the Meraglim wasn't there. They loved Torah, they learned Torah, they lived Torah. It says there'll never be a generation like Dora Midbar. Never again. They were more there than we are, and they made a mistake. So before a person makes the same mistake, a person has to ask himself, where's that rejection coming from? Is it really, is Torah the reason why I'm doing it, or is Torah the excuse why I'm doing it? But really, I'm just not there. Because it may turn out that you're part of the Dora Midbar, and you're doing the exact same thing all over again. Can you imagine that? Coming back 3,000 years later to rectify a mistake and doing the exact same thing all over again? Well, you don't believe it? You don't hold by the Arizal? He says it beferish. Well, something happened to us. Something happened to us along the way. We're from, but we don't believe in Tanakh. Right? We learn Torah, but we don't hold of the Arizal. And the things he said, Gemara, but who knows what this is supposed to be? This is as real as anything. This is real. There's a Rizal giving over a piece of Torah that applies like any other piece of Torah. And according to the Leshem, as of he died in 1928, he said anybody who denies this is denying a chelik of Torah Shebal Peh, and therefore is a kofar. So he says, I can show you inside. He said once we're makabel, especially the Rizal, by the way. Once we're makabel, accepted, but no. So it's just not connecting. So you need more, right? You need more. It's like somebody who tells somebody, smoking's bad for your health. It's really bad for your health. I can show you pictures. Yeah, I know. I've seen those pictures before too. In Canada, they used to sell packets of cigarettes. They don't do it anymore. But for a while, they sold packets of cigarettes, in Montreal at least. They had pictures of black lungs on the box. Pictures of black lungs on the box. And I was shocked. I said, what is that? He goes, those are lungs. So I said, tell me, does it deter anybody from buying them? Same business as before. It was the exact same business. Pick up the cigarettes right in front of your eyes. I think they stopped doing it, but so I said, why don't you just hang guns instead? Or just give people guns and let them shoot themselves in the head. It's like, what's the difference anymore? Yeah, people think they have a long time to live, right? They hear it, right? They say, for example, I read something about Alcoholics Anonymous, that when a person's an alcoholic, for example, that, if one person says, you got to stop drinking, you're an alcoholic, it's not good for you, right? The person won't respond to that. One of the devices they use to get a person to AA is they call the whole family together. The whole family comes together for a meeting, and they all tell him, you're an alcoholic. You need help. It's very hard to turn that down. Very often, it makes the experience real, and the person will start the program and on the path, hopefully, to recovery. Same thing, is people hear one detail, and they hear one detail, and they hear one detail, and no one else is repeating it, and the Rosh Hashiva didn't say it, and it's not someone else is sporing, somebody just happened to bring it out, and say, okay, so you pull them all together, the one sefer, all the details, Rabbi Barchana, this one, we got a whole bunch more coming up as Rosh Hashem, much more coming up. When the picture is complete, a person should stand back and say, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, where have I been? Why didn't I know this information? Why didn't I hear before? This changes everything. I have to rethink my whole life.